Are you going to take our orders? Or just stand there useless? The CEO's voice cut through the table like a blade-sharp, dismissive final. She lowered her eyes, but didn't leave, because she had already heard everything. The deal, the doubt, the quiet Arabic whispers that would destroy him before dessert arrived. He thought she was invisible. He thought he was winning. What he didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that the waitress he just humiliated was the only reason his empire wasn't about to collapse in the next 5 minutes. And she was about to decide whether to save him or let him fall. Rachel Martinez wiped down the corner table for the 3rd time that evening, her movements precise despite the exhaustion settling into her bones. The upscale restaurant where she worked, Labov, catered to New York's elite, and tonight was no exception. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Manhattan skyline glittered like scattered diamonds. But Rachel barely noticed anymore. After 2 years of serving the city's wealthiest, the view had lost its magic. What hadn't changed was her need for this job. Every paycheck went toward her father's medical bills, the cancer treatments that were slowly draining both his strength and her savings. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and straightened her black apron, preparing for the evening rush. The restaurant manager, Pierre, appeared at her elbow with his characteristic nervous energy. His eyes darted toward the entrance where 3 men in expensive suits had just walked in. Rachel recognized the type immediately. Wall Street executives, probably with their tailored clothing and air of supreme confidence. The man in the center stood out tall and commanding, with sharp features and dark hair touched with silver at the temples. He moved like someone accustomed to owning every room he entered. This moment would change everything. Pierre gripped her arm with unnecessary force. Table 12. Those are the Sheikh's representatives from Dubai. They're here to meet with Daniel Cross, the CEO of Cross International. This is a massive deal for us. Do not mess this up, Rachel. She nodded, grabbing menus and forcing her professional smile into place. As she approached the table, she could hear the men speaking in rapid Arabic, their voices low and serious. Rachel's heart skipped. Arabic, the language her late mother had taught her, the one connection she still had to her Lebanese heritage. She hadn't spoken it in months, not since her mother's death 3 years ago, but she understood every word they were saying, and what she heard made her blood run cold. The younger of the 2 Arab men was expressing serious doubts about the business deal. "I don't trust American businessmen," he said in Arabic to his companion. "They smile to your face and stab you in the back. This Cross character is probably no different." Before Rachel could process this, the restaurant's front door opened again, and Pierre practically ran to greet the new arrival. Daniel Cross entered like a storm, his presence immediately dominating the space. He was exactly as the business magazines portrayed him. Devastatingly handsome, in a cold, untouchable way, with ice blue eyes that seemed to calculate the worth of everything they landed on. At 34, he'd built a real estate empire that spanned 3 continents, and his reputation for ruthless business dealings preceded him. He spotted the Arab gentleman and crossed the restaurant with purposeful strides, a calculated smile on his face. Rachel stepped back as he reached the table, but not before their eyes met for a brief second. His gaze passed over her like she was furniture utterly dismissible. Something about that look stung more than it should have. "Gentlemen," Daniel said warmly, extending his hand. "Sheikh Ahmed, Mr. Khalil. Welcome to New York." The older man, Sheikh Ahmed, rose and shook his hand with reserved politeness. The younger man, Khalil, barely acknowledged him. Rachel stood to the side pad, ready, waiting to take their orders. But Daniel didn't sit down immediately. Instead, he launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech about the virtues of their potential partnership. His voice smooth and persuasive. Khalil's expression grew more skeptical by the second. Rachel caught fragments of their whispered Arabic comments to each other. They were not impressed. In fact, they were planning to cut the dinner short and fly back to Dubai that very night. The multi-million-dollar deal was already crumbling, and Daniel had no idea. She hesitated, her pen hovering over her notepad. It wasn't her place to interfere. She was just a waitress. These people lived in a different world, one where someone like her was invisible. But something in her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Her mother, who had always said that kindness and truth mattered more than status or wealth. Rachel was just about to step forward when Daniel finally noticed her standing there. His eyes flicked to her name tag, then back to her face with obvious impatience. "Are you going to take our orders? Or are you planning to decorate the room all evening?" His tone was dismissive, almost mocking, and the Sheikh's representatives looked uncomfortable. Rachel felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Of course, sir. My apologies. What can I get for you, gentlemen?" Daniel waved his hand dismissively. "Bring us your finest wine and whatever the chef recommends. We have important business to discuss, and we don't need interruptions." He turned back to the Arab men, effectively dismissing her. But as Rachel started to leave, she heard Khalil mutter in Arabic, "See arrogant, just like I expected. The Sheikh should never have agreed to this meeting." Sheikh Ahmed replied also in Arabic, "Give him a chance, nephew. But I admit I'm having my doubts." Rachel froze. This was it. The deal was about to fall apart, and Daniel Cross, with all his money and power, had no clue that his dismissive attitude had just cost him millions. She had no idea what was about to happen. Her practical side screamed at her to walk away to keep her head down and do her job. But her conscience, the part of her that her mother had carefully nurtured, wouldn't let her stay silent. She turned back to the table, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Excuse me," she said quietly. Daniel looked up with visible annoyance. What now? Rachel took a breath and switched to Arabic, her accent flawless, speaking directly to Sheikh Ahmed. "Forgive me for the interruption, Your Excellency, but I couldn't help overhearing your concerns. I understand that, Mr. Cross's manner may seem abrupt, but I assure you his business reputation in New York is impeccable. Perhaps there's been a cultural misunderstanding." The reaction was immediate and electric. Sheikh Ahmed's eyebrows shot up in surprise and pleasure. Khalil's mouth literally fell open, and Daniel Cross looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, confusion, and then something that might have been anger. "You speak Arabic?" Sheikh Ahmed asked her in the same language, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Yes, sir. My mother was from Beirut. She made sure I learned properly." Daniel had risen from his seat, his face now turning an interesting shade of red. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. Rachel ignored him, keeping her attention on the sheikh. "I apologize if I've overstepped, but I heard Mr. Khalil expressing concerns about American business practices. I've worked in this restaurant for 2 years, and I've seen Mr. Cross dine here many times. He always treats his business partners fairly, and his word is trusted by everyone in this city." She had no idea if this was actually true, but she was committed now. Khalil leaned forward, studying her with new interest. "And how would a waitress know about his business dealings? Because waitresses are invisible to powerful men." Rachel replied in Arabic, then switched to English, looking directly at Daniel for the first time with something other than deference. "They say things in front of us that they'd never say in a boardroom. I've heard at least a dozen different businessmen speak highly of Mr. Cross's integrity over the past 2 years. Whatever else he may be, he honors his commitments." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Sheikh Ahmed looked thoroughly delighted, and Khalil's suspicious expression had softened into something resembling respect. Sheikh Ahmed spoke in English now, his eyes twinkling. "Mr. Cross, you didn't mention you had such capable staff. This young woman has just told us more about your character in 2 minutes than you managed in 20. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Rachel had never seen someone so thoroughly at a loss for words. For a man who'd built an empire on his ability to negotiate and persuade, he looked completely blindsided. She's not my staff. She works for the restaurant he finally managed." Nevertheless, Sheikh Ahmed continued. "Her endorsement carries weight. Anyone who speaks Arabic that fluently has ties to our culture, and we value such connections." He turned to Rachel with a kind smile. "Thank you, my dear. You've given us something to think about." Rachel nodded, her professional mask slipping back into place even as her hands trembled slightly. Of course, I'll go get your wine now. She walked away on shaky legs, feeling Daniel's eyes boring into her back like lasers. She had just done something incredibly stupid. She had inserted herself into a business deal worth millions spoken out of turn and probably made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in New York. Pierre was going to kill her. Worse, Daniel Cross might have her fired just for the audacity of speaking. But as she reached the bar and leaned against it for support, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Her mother would have been proud. In the reflection of the bar's mirror, she could see Daniel had sat back down, but he kept glancing in her direction with an expression she couldn't quite read. The Sheikh and Khalil were now engaged in animated conversation with him, and the atmosphere at the table had completely transformed. Against all odds, she might have just saved his deal. What happened next shocked everyone. When Rachel returned with the wine, the entire dynamic at the table had shifted. The Sheikh was laughing at something Daniel had said, and even Khalil looked relaxed. But the moment she approached, Daniel stood up abruptly. "A word," he said to her, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "In private now." Rachel's stomach dropped. This was it. She was about to be fired or, worse, publicly humiliated by a man who didn't take kindly to being shown up by a waitress. She sat down the wine with trembling hands and followed him to a quiet corner near the kitchen, acutely aware of Pierre's anxious gaze following them. Daniel Cross stood with his back to her for a long moment, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he finally turned around, his ice blue eyes were blazing with an emotion she couldn't name. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. Rachel lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I'm someone who speaks Arabic and couldn't stand by while a business deal fell apart due to a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. Daniel's laugh was harsh and humorless. "You had no right to interfere in my business. You're a waitress, for God's sake. You don't know anything about these negotiations or what's at stake. I know enough to recognize when someone is about to walk away from a table." Rachel shot back, her own temper rising now. Mr. Khalil was planning to leave before the appetizers even arrived. They were going to fly back to Dubai tonight. Your deal was dead, Mr. Cross, and you were too busy being dismissive to notice. Daniel's jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I speak fluent Arabic. Remember, I heard every word they said." She took a step closer, her dark eyes flashing. "They thought you were arrogant. They thought you were just another American businessman who would smile and lie. And the way you treated me, the way you mocked me in front of them, only confirmed their worst suspicions." The words hit their mark. Daniel's expression shifted, something like realization dawning in his eyes. "I didn't mock you. You dismissed me like I was nothing. Are you planning to decorate the room all evening?" Rachel quoted his words back to him with bitter accuracy. "That's how you speak to people you consider beneath you." And they noticed Mr. Cross. They noticed everything. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed almost vulnerable. For a moment, the polished CEO facade cracked, and Rachel saw something else underneath. Frustration, maybe, or embarrassment. "Fine," he said finally. "You're right. I was rude, but that doesn't explain why you helped me. What do you want money?" The question felt like a slap. Rachel's eyes widened with genuine hurt. "I don't want your money. I helped because it was the right thing to do. Because my mother taught me that we should help people when we can, even people who don't deserve it." She turned to walk away, but Daniel caught her arm. His grip was gentle but firm, and the touch sent an unexpected jolt of electricity through her. "Wait," he said, his voice softer now. "I'm sorry. I'm not good at this, at being wrong." Rachel looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. Up close she could see that his eyes weren't just ice blue. They had flecks of grey in them, like a winter sky. And right now, they looked almost uncertain. "You should get back to your dinner," she said quietly. "Your guests are waiting." Daniel released her arm, but didn't move. "I need you to translate for me tonight. I'll pay you whatever you want. I told you I don't want your money. Then what do you want? The question hung in the air between them. Rachel didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had too many answers. She wanted her father to get better. She wanted to not have to work double shifts just to pay medical bills. She wanted to finish the business degree she'd abandoned when her mother died. But none of those were things Daniel Cross could give her with a snap of his fingers, despite his wealth. I want you to stop treating people like they're invisible, she said finally. I want you to remember that everyone has value regardless of their job or their bank account. Something flickered across Daniel's face. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. Deal, he said, extending his hand. Help me tonight and I promise to be more aware. Rachel hesitated, then shook his hand. His palm was warm and calloused, surprising for someone who spent most of his time in boardrooms. One night she agreed. But I'm still doing my job. If Pierre sees me neglecting my tables, I'll get fired. I'll handle Pierre, Daniel said with absolute confidence. Come on, we have a deal to save. The rest of the dinner was surreal. Rachel found herself seated at the table with the sheikh, and his nephew translating nuances and cultural references that Daniel missed. She watched as the powerful CEO navigated the negotiation with impressive skill once he understood what the Arab gentleman actually valued. But what struck her most was how Daniel changed after their conversation in the corner. He was still confident, still commanding, but there was a new awareness in the way he interacted with the restaurant staff. He thanked the sommelier by name. He apologized to another waitress when he accidentally bumped into her. Small things, but Rachel noticed, and so did Sheikh Ahmed, who watched the entire evening with knowing eyes. By the time dessert arrived, the deal was not only saved, but expanded. Sheikh Ahmed wanted to partner on 3 properties instead of 1, a commitment worth over $50 million. Khalil, who had been so skeptical at the start, was now discussing investment timelines with genuine enthusiasm. This has been a most enlightening evening, Sheikh Ahmed said in Arabic, looking at Rachel with warm approval. You've reminded me that true character reveals itself in how we treat those we perceive as powerless. Mr. Cross is fortunate to have you in his life. Rachel blushed, switching to English. I just work at the restaurant, Your Excellency. Tonight was unusual. Perhaps the sheikh said with a mysterious smile. Or perhaps it was destined. As the Arab gentleman prepared to leave, Sheikh Ahmed pulled Daniel aside. Rachel couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Daniel's expression grow serious, then surprised, then almost thoughtful. When they finally left, Daniel returned to the table where Rachel still sat. Her shift long since ended, but her professional responsibilities unclear. They want you to come to the signing, Daniel said, without preamble. What the contract signing in Dubai next month, Sheikh Ahmed specifically requested that you be there as a cultural liaison. He sat down heavily, loosening his tie. He said he wants someone present who understands both cultures and isn't afraid to speak truth to power. Rachel's mind reeled. I can't go to Dubai. I'm a waitress. I have responsibilities here. I'll pay you $10,000 for 1 week of your time, Daniel said bluntly. Plus all expenses, first-class flight, 5-star hotel, the works. $10,000? That was 3 months of her father's treatment. Maybe more. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Why, she asked. Why would you do that? Daniel leaned back, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. Because you saved my company $50 million tonight. Because Sheikh Ahmed trusts you, which means I need you there to ensure this deal goes through. And because he paused, seeming to struggle with the words, because you were right about how I treat people, about being dismissive. I've been so focused on building my empire that I forgot what it cost me along the way. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the arrogant CEO from earlier. This was someone else, someone more real. I need to think about it, Rachel said carefully. I have my father to consider. He's sick, and I'm his only family. Bring him, Daniel said immediately. Bring him to Dubai. I'll arrange for the best doctors there to consult on his case while we're handling the business. No charge. Rachel's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. Why are you being so generous? Oh, Because tonight you showed me something I'd forgotten, Daniel said quietly. That money and power mean nothing if you've lost your humanity. My father used to say that before he died. Before I became this, he gestured at himself with something like disgust. Before I became someone who mocks waitresses, they sat in silence for a moment, the restaurant nearly empty now, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. Rachel felt like she was standing on the edge of something enormous, something that could change her entire life. But she also felt the weight of her responsibilities, the familiar fear of hoping for too much. I'll give you my answer in 2 days, she said finally. I need to talk to my father's doctors and make sure he can travel. Daniel nodded, pulling out a business card and writing on the back. My personal number. Call me anytime, day or night. As Rachel finally left the restaurant hours later, her mind was spinning. She'd started the evening as an invisible waitress and ended it with a business proposition from one of New York's most powerful men. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father asking how work went. Rachel smiled, typing back that it had been interesting. Interesting didn't begin to cover it. Little did she know this was only the beginning of a journey that would take her far beyond the restaurant's walls and into a world she'd never imagined. But it would also force her to confront feelings she wasn't prepared for and make choices that would test everything she believed about herself. And before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe for more. Now let's see what happens next. 2 days later, Rachel stood outside the gleaming tower that housed Cross International, her father's encouraging words still ringing in her ears. He'd insisted she take the opportunity had practically pushed her out the door. The lobby was all marble and glass, intimidatingly expensive. Rachel felt out of place in her simple dress and cardigan, clutching Daniel's business card like a lifeline. The receptionist, a polished woman with perfect makeup, looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. Can I help you? I'm here to see Daniel Cross. He's expecting me. Rachel tried to sound confident. Name Rachel Martinez. The receptionist's eyebrows rose slightly, but she made the call. Moments later, Rachel was being escorted to the top floor where Daniel's office occupied a corner with views of the entire city. Daniel stood by the window when she entered, his silhouette dark against the bright sky. He turned as she walked in, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. You came, he said finally. I wasn't sure you would. My father convinced me, Rachel admitted. He said, opportunities like this don't come twice. Your father is a wise man. Daniel moved to his desk, pulling out a folder. I've made arrangements for him to see Dr. Chen at Mount C while we're gone. She's the best oncologist in the country, and I've booked consultations with specialists in Dubai as well. Rachel's throat tightened. Mr. Cross, I don't know how to thank you. Call me Daniel, and you can thank me by helping make sure this deal goes smoothly. He handed her the folder. This is your contract. $10,000 for 1 week plus all expenses. Your father's medical consultations are separate, not contingent on your employment. She opened the folder with shaking hands. The contract was exactly as he described, professionally drafted and generous. But there was something else, a clause that made her pause. What's this about being available for additional cultural consulting after Dubai Sheikh Ahmed was impressed with you? Daniel explained. He's already mentioned other potential deals in the Middle East. If this goes well, there could be more opportunities, but that's optional, not required. Rachel looked up at him, searching his face for ulterior motives. But Daniel met her gaze steadily, and she saw only sincerity. Okay, she said, her heart pounding. I'll do it. Good. Daniel's smile was brief but genuine. We leave in 3 weeks. I'll have my assistant send you all the details. In the meantime, I'd like you to come in a few times to learn about the project we're negotiating. You'll be more effective if you understand what we're actually building. Over the next 3 weeks, Rachel's life transformed. She continued working at the restaurant, but 3 afternoons a week she went to Cross International, where she learned about luxury resort development, international real estate law, and the intricate dance of Middle Eastern business culture. Daniel was a demanding teacher, expecting her to absorb information quickly and ask intelligent questions. But he was also patient in ways that surprised her, explaining concepts multiple times. If she didn't understand, never making her feel stupid for not knowing the business world's jargon. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted between them. It started with small things. Daniel bringing her coffee, the way she liked it without asking. Rachel noticing when he was stressed and quietly handling tasks to ease his burden. Conversations that started about business and drifted into personal territory late afternoons in his office when the rest of the staff had gone home. Rachel learned that Daniel's father had built Cross International from nothing, that Daniel had watched him work himself to death by 50, that Daniel had inherited the company at 25 and spent the next 9 years trying to prove he was worthy of his father's legacy, even as it consumed his entire life. Daniel learned that Rachel had been on track for a business degree at NYU, that she'd dreamed of opening her own restaurant someday, that she'd given it all up when her mother died, and her father got sick, choosing family over ambition without a second thought. "Do you regret it?" Daniel asked one evening, as they reviewed contract terms in his office, the city spread out below them in a carpet of lights. "Giving up your dreams?" Rachel considered the question carefully. "No, my father needed me. But sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd finished school, if I'd had the chance to build something of my own." "You could still do it," Daniel said quietly. "Go back to school. I could help arrange it." "Why?" Rachel asked the question that had been building for weeks. "Why are you helping me so much? This has gone way beyond what you need for the Dubai deal." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the city below. When he spoke, his voice was rough with honesty. "Because when I look at you, I see everything I used to believe in before I became this person obsessed with success. You remind me that there's more to life than the next deal, the next acquisition. And I..." He paused, turning to face her. "I haven't felt this human in years." The confession hung in the air between them, charged with possibilities and dangers. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest. She knew she should say something professional, something that would restore the appropriate distance between a CEO and his temporary consultant. But she couldn't, because the truth was, she felt it too. This pull between them, this connection that had nothing to do with business or contracts or cultural liaising. "Daniel," she began, not even sure what she was going to say. But before she could continue, his phone rang, shattering the moment. It was his assistant with an urgent matter, and the spell broke. Rachel gathered her things, murmuring about getting home to check on her father. As she left his office, she could feel Daniel's eyes on her back, could feel the weight of words unspoken. 3 weeks suddenly felt very far away, and much too close at the same time. The flight to Dubai was unlike anything Rachel had ever experienced. The first-class cabin was more luxurious than her entire apartment, with seats that converted to fully flat beds and flight attendants who anticipated her every need before she could voice it. Her father, who'd been cleared for travel by Dr. Chen with careful instructions, sat across the aisle, his eyes bright with wonder despite his illness. "I never thought I'd see the world like this," he said to Rachel in Spanish, their private language. "Your mother would be so proud of you, mija." Rachel smiled, but her eyes drifted to where Daniel sat several rows ahead, working on his laptop even at 30,000 feet. He'd been distant since that evening in his office, professional to the point of coldness. It hurt more than Rachel wanted to admit. During the layover in London, Rachel's father needed to rest, so she sat with him in the airline lounge while Daniel made phone calls. But when they boarded the second flight, something had changed. Daniel appeared at her seat with 2 cups of Arabic coffee and a tentative smile. "Your father's sleeping," he said. "I thought you might want company." Rachel accepted the coffee, inhaling the cardamom-scented steam. "You didn't have to do any of this." "I know." Daniel settled into the seat beside her, and Rachel was acutely aware of how close he was, how the armrest between them suddenly felt both too wide and not wide enough. "Rachel, about the other night in my office." "You don't have to explain." Rachel interrupted quickly. "It's fine. We both got caught up in the moment. It won't happen again." "What if I don't want it to be fine?" Daniel's voice was low and tense. What if I can't stop thinking about you? Rachel's breath caught. Daniel, we can't. You're my employer. This is a professional arrangement. Is it? He turned to face her fully now, because it stopped feeling professional the moment you walked into that restaurant and turned my entire world upside down. You barely knew me then. I knew enough. I knew you were brave enough to risk your job to do the right thing. I knew you cared more about integrity than money. I knew. He paused, running a hand through his hair in that gesture she'd come to recognize as vulnerability. I knew you made me want to be a better man. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I'm just a waitress with a sick father and student loans I'll never pay off. You're Daniel Cross. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. His hand found hers, warm and solid. I want the woman who reminded me what it means to be human. I want the woman who speaks 5 languages and dreams of opening her own restaurant. I want you, Rachel. Just you. The confession hung between them in the dim cabin light. Rachel knew she should pull away, should remind him of all the reasons this was impossible, but instead she laced her fingers through his. This is crazy, she whispered. Completely insane, Daniel agreed. But I haven't felt this alive in years. Tell me you don't feel it too. Rachel couldn't lie. I feel it. But Daniel, what happens after Dubai? You go back to your world. I go back to mine. This can't work. Why not? Because I've seen how your world operates. I've watched you in meetings, watched the way business consumes you. I can't be another acquisition, another deal to be managed. Daniel's grip on her hand tightened. You could never be that. You're the first thing in 9 years that's made me question whether building an empire is worth losing everything else. Before Rachel could respond, turbulence hit the plane, jostling them together. Daniel's arm went around her, instinctively protective, and Rachel let herself lean into him for just a moment. When the turbulence passed, neither of them moved apart. They stayed like that for hours, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Daniel told her about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, the loneliness of success, the relationships that had failed because he'd chosen work over love every single time. Rachel shared her dreams of culinary school, her mother's recipes that she'd memorized, but never had the resources to recreate properly, her fear that her father wouldn't live to see her achieve anything meaningful. As dawn broke over the Arabian desert painting, the dunes in shades of gold and pink, Daniel pressed a kiss to Rachel's temple. Whatever happens in Dubai, he said softly, I want you to know that you've already changed my life. Whether you choose to stay in it or not, I'll be grateful for that. Rachel closed her eyes, breathing in his scent, memorizing this moment. She was falling for him, had probably been falling since that first night in the restaurant. But falling and landing safely were 2 different things, and she couldn't shake the feeling that heartbreak was inevitable. Dubai was overwhelming. The hotel was a 7-star palace of marble and gold with a private butler assigned to each suite. Rachel's father was whisked away to his medical consultations with doctors who spoke both English and Spanish, their equipment more advanced than anything available in New York. And Rachel found herself thrust into a world of high-stakes negotiations, cultural protocols, and the constant electric presence of Daniel Cross. The contract signing was scheduled for 3 days after their arrival, giving them time to acclimate and prepare. Sheikh Ahmed had arranged for them to stay at his family's estate for the final negotiations, a gesture of hospitality that Daniel said was extremely significant. If he's inviting us into his home, the deal is essentially done. Daniel explained as they drove through the city in a chauffeured Mercedes. But we still need to honor every tradition, every courtesy. One misstep could undo everything. Rachel nodded, trying to absorb the weight of responsibility. She'd been studying Emirati culture every spare moment, learning the nuances that would help her navigate the social aspects of the deal. But nothing could have prepared her for the reality of Sheikh Ahmed's estate. It was a palace straight out of a fairy tale with fountains and gardens and rooms that seemed to stretch into infinity. The sheikh greeted them personally, his wife and daughters, welcoming Rachel with warmth that surprised her. We do not often have American women who understand our language and customs. The Shakes' eldest daughter Illa said as she showed Rachel to her room, "My father speaks very highly of you. He says you have a good heart." Rachel's room overlooked a garden filled with jasmine and roses, the scent intoxicating. She was unpacking when a knock came at her door. Daniel stood there looking uncertain in a way that still caught her off guard. "I'm down the hall," he said. "I wanted to make sure you were comfortable. It's beautiful." Overwhelming but beautiful, Rachel, about what we discussed on the plane. "Daniel, we should focus on the deal," Rachel said gently. "That's why we're here." "Right, of course." But he didn't leave. Instead, he stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Except I can't focus on anything except you. Do you know how hard it was to sit in that car and not reach for your hand to pretend we're just colleagues when every cell in my body wants to?" He cut himself off, jaw clenched. Rachel's heart was racing. Once to what this Daniel said and crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face, his eyes searching hers for permission. "Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me this is a terrible idea and I'll walk away. But Rachel, if you feel even a fraction of what I feel." Rachel didn't let him finish. She rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring weeks of pent-up longing into that single contact. Daniel made a sound, low in his throat, and pulled her closer, the kiss deepening until Rachel forgot where she ended, and he began. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. That was either the best or worst decision we've ever made. Probably both, Rachel admitted, her fingers curled into his shirt. "We should be sensible. We should wait until after the deal. We should," Daniel agreed. But he kissed her again, anyway, softer this time. Reverent. "Tomorrow we'll be sensible. Tonight, let me just hold you." They lay on the bed together, fully clothed. Daniel's arms wrapped around Rachel as they watched the sun set over the desert through the window. For the first time in years, Rachel felt completely safe, completely at peace. But this was only the beginning. The next morning, Rachel woke to find Daniel gone and a note on the pillow. "Business calls. See you at breakfast." Last night was everything. D. She smiled, pressing the note to her chest, like a teenager. But her happiness was short-lived. At breakfast, she encountered someone she hadn't expected. Veronica Chen, a stunning woman in an expensive suit who kissed Daniel's cheek with familiar ease. "Rachel, this is Veronica." Daniel said, his expression carefully neutral. "She's Cross International's head legal counsel. Veronica Rachel Martinez, our cultural liaison." The waitress, Veronica said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Daniel told me all about you. How novel." Rachel felt the barb, but kept her expression pleasant. "It's nice to meet you." Throughout breakfast, Veronica made subtle digs reminding everyone that she'd worked with Daniel for 6 years, that she knew the company inside and out, that she and Daniel had a history of successful partnerships. The implication was clear. Rachel was temporary, an outsider playing in a world she didn't belong to. Daniel seemed oblivious to the tension focused on reviewing contracts with Veronica. Rachel forced down her food, feeling foolish for thinking last night had meant something real. By mid-morning, the negotiations began in earnest. Rachel translated and facilitated, but her mind kept drifting to the way Veronica touched Daniel's arm, the inside jokes they shared, the shorthand of people who'd worked together for years. She was so distracted that she nearly missed a crucial cultural nuance in the Sheikh's language. Khalil, the nephew, had made a comment in Arabic about timeline concerns that could derail the entire deal. Rachel caught it just in time, smoothly redirecting the conversation and addressing his concerns in a way that honored his position while reassuring Daniel. Sheikh Ahmed noticed, giving her an approving nod, but Veronica noticed too, her eyes narrowing with something like calculation. During a break, Veronica cornered Rachel in the powder room. "You're good at this," she said, reapplying her lipstick. "The cultural thing. But you should know Daniel's work is his life. Women come and go, but Cross International is forever. I'm just here to do a job," Rachel said evenly. "Of course you are." Veronica's smile was sharp. And when the job is done, you'll go back to your restaurant, and Daniel will move on to the next project. That's how he operates. I've seen it a dozen times. The words hit their target, confirming every fear Rachel had been trying to suppress. But she lifted her chin. If you're trying to warn me off, you should know I'm not some naive girl. I know exactly what this is. Do you? Veronica's eyes glittered. Because from where I'm standing, you look like you're already in love with him. And that, sweetheart, is a mistake. Rachel didn't dignify that with a response. She walked out, her heart pounding. Veronica's words echoing in her head. Was she in love with Daniel? And if she was it the biggest mistake of her life? The afternoon negotiations were tense. Rachel focused on her job, translating with precision and helping navigate cultural nuances, but she could feel the distance growing between her and Daniel. Every time Veronica leaned in to whisper something to him, every shared glance between them felt like a knife twisting in Rachel's chest. By evening, when Sheikh Ahmed called for a break before the formal dinner, Rachel was exhausted emotionally more than physically. She retreated to her room, planning to take a moment to compose herself before the evening's festivities. But Daniel followed her. "Rachel, wait," he called as she reached her door. Called as she turned, her expression carefully neutral. "Yes, Mr. Cross." Daniel flinched at the formality. "Don't do that. Don't shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm doing my job, which is what you're paying me for." Rachel's voice was calm, but her hands trembled as she reached for her door handle. "What's wrong? What happened?" Daniel moved closer, concern etched on his face. "Nothing happened. I'm just remembering my place, that's all. Your place." Daniel's voice rose in frustration. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means Veronica was right. You have a life, a world that I'm just passing through. After this deal is done, you'll go back to New York. Back to your company, back to people who actually belong in your orbit." Rachel's composure cracked, tears threatening. "And I'll go back to being a waitress who had a very strange, very brief adventure in a world that was never meant for her." "That's not true," Daniel said fiercely. He grabbed her hand, pulling her into her room and closing the door for privacy. "Rachel, whatever Veronica said to you, it's not true. You're not just passing through my life. You've become essential to it. Have I? Or am I just useful for this deal?" "Damn the deal," Daniel said, and the vehemence in his voice shocked her. "I don't care about the deal. I care about you. You say that now, but nothing." Daniel cubed her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I know my track record. I know I've let work consume me, let relationships fall apart, because I was too focused on the next acquisition. But Rachel, you're not an acquisition. You're the woman who made me remember what it feels like to be alive." Rachel whispered, but he kept talking. "I've been half dead for years, going through the motions, building an empire, because it was the only thing I knew how to do. And then you walked into that restaurant and challenged me, saved me, showed me what I'd been missing. Do you really think I'd let that go? Let you go? What about Veronica? She clearly thinks she has some claim on you. Veronica is my attorney. That's all she's ever been. Yes, we dated years ago briefly, but it didn't work precisely because I was too focused on work. She understands that part of my life, but she doesn't understand me. Not the way you do." Rachel wanted desperately to believe him. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that when we go back to New York, reality will set in. You'll realize I don't fit in your world, that this was just a fantasy born from exotic locations and high-pressure situations." "Then I'll change my world," Daniel said simply. "I'll make it fit you, because the alternative, a life without you in it, is unacceptable." He kissed her, then soft and sweet and full of promise. Rachel melted into him, all her doubts temporarily silenced by the sheer rightness of being in his arms. When they finally pulled apart, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "Come to dinner with me tonight, not as my cultural liaison, but as the woman I'm falling in love with. Let everyone see us together. Let them know you're mine and I'm yours." Rachel's breath caught at the word love, But before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. Daniel groaned. Terrible timing. It was one of Sheikh Ahmed's staff informing them that the sheikh requested their presence early to show them something special before dinner. They had 20 minutes to prepare. Rachel quickly changed into one of the elegant dresses Daniel's assistant had procured for the trip. A flowing emerald silk that made her dark hair and eyes stand out. When she emerged from the bathroom, Daniel was waiting, having changed into a traditional kanura that the sheikh had gifted him. He looked breathtakingly handsome, the white robe contrasting with his dark hair and blue eyes. "You're beautiful," he said softly. "So are you," Rachel replied, making him laugh. The sheikh had gathered his family and guests in a private courtyard, where the evening sky was beginning to paint itself in shades of orange and purple. In the center of the courtyard was an elaborate set-up traditional Arabic coffee service dates and an elderly man with an ode the traditional stringed instrument. "This is a small taste of our heritage," Sheikh Ahmed explained. Music, coffee, conversation under the stars. In our culture, these simple pleasures are where true connection happens, where we learn who people really are beneath their business masks. Illa the Sheikh's daughter took Rachel's hand and pulled her to sit with the women of the family. They asked her about her Lebanese mother, about her life in America, about her dreams. The conversation flowed easily, mixing Arabic and English, and Rachel found herself genuinely enjoying their company. From across the courtyard, she could feel Daniel's eyes on her, watching her laugh and gesture as she told a story about her mother's cooking. Sheikh Ahmed noticed Daniel's distraction and chuckled. "You watch her like a man who has found something precious," he said in English, low enough that only Daniel could hear. Daniel didn't bother denying it. "She is precious. She's changed everything for me." "Good. A man needs more than money and power to be truly successful. He needs someone who sees him, not his accomplishments." "That young woman sees you, Daniel Cross. Don't let her go." "I don't intend to," Daniel said firmly. As the evening progressed, the oud player began to sing, and to Rachel's delight, the songs were ones her mother had sung to her as a child. Without thinking, she began to sing along, her voice clear and true. The courtyard fell silent, everyone listening to this American woman singing ancient Arabic love songs with perfect pronunciation and genuine feeling. When the song ended, there was a moment of stillness. And then the Sheikh's wife began to applaud, tears in her eyes. "Your mother taught you well," she said in Arabic. "She lives on in you." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. And across the courtyard, Daniel rose and came to her side, not caring about protocol. He took her hand in full view of everyone. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Rachel nodded, squeezing his hand. "I am now." Sheikh Ahmed watched this exchange with satisfaction. Later, when dinner was served in the main dining room, he made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Tomorrow we sign the contracts," he said, raising his glass. "But tonight we celebrate not just a business partnership, but the bridges between cultures, between hearts. Daniel, you came to Dubai seeking a business deal, but I think you found something far more valuable." His eyes twinkled as he looked at Rachel and Daniel's joined hands. "Love that crosses boundaries is the best investment of all." Veronica's face was tight with barely concealed anger, but Rachel barely noticed. She was too focused on Daniel. On the way, he looked at her like she was the most important person in the world. After dinner, Daniel pulled Rachel into a moonlit garden away from the other guests. The air was fragrant with night-blooming jasmine, and somewhere in the distance, a fountain burbled softly. "Dance with me," Daniel said, pulling out his phone and starting music. There was no traditional song, just a soft jazz melody, but it was perfect. Rachel stepped into his arms, and they swayed together under the Arabian stars, the rest of the world falling away. "I meant what I said on the plane," Daniel murmured against her hair. "You've changed my life. When we go back to New York, I want you with me. Not as an employee, not as a consultant, but as my partner in everything. Daniel, I can't just quit my job and become your girlfriend. I have responsibilities, my father. I'll take care of your father, the best doctors, the best treatment, whatever he needs. And you, Rachel Martinez, are going back to school to finish your business degree. I'm not asking you to give up your dreams for me. I'm asking you to let me help you achieve them." Rachel pulled back to look at him. "Why? Why would you do all of this?" "Because I love you," Daniel said simply. "I'm in love with you, Rachel. Completely, irrevocably, terrifyingly in love with you. And I hope you feel the same way." Rachel's heart felt like it might burst. "I do. I love you too, but I'm still scared." "So am I," Daniel admitted. "I've never felt this way about anyone. I've never wanted to rearrange my entire life for another person, but with you, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It feels like finally getting my priorities right." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Rachel gave herself over to it completely. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Daniel smiled. "Is that a yes? Will you give us a real chance when we get back to New York?" "Yes," Rachel whispered. "Yes, I'll give us a chance." The next day, the contract signing went flawlessly. Rachel facilitated with professional ease, translating not just words, but intentions, helping Daniel and Sheikh Ahmed understand each other on a level that went beyond business. Veronica tried several times to undermine her, pointing out minor discrepancies or questioning Rachel's translations. But Sheikh Ahmed himself shut her down. "Miss Martinez has proven herself invaluable," the sheikh said firmly. "I trust her completely." By the end of the day, the deal was done. $55 million in luxury resort development, with provisions for future collaboration. It was the biggest success of Daniel's career. And as he shook hands with Sheikh Ahmed, the older man leaned in. "The business is good, but the woman is better," he said in Arabic, knowing Rachel would hear and translate. "Don't forget that. I won't," Daniel promised. That evening, as they prepared to leave the Sheikh's estate and return to their hotel before flying home, Veronica made one last attempt. She cornered Daniel in the hallway, her expression desperate. "Daniel, you're making a mistake." She said, "That woman is not right for your world. She'll hold you back, distract you from what's important." "She is what's important," Daniel said coldly. "And Veronica, I think it's time we discussed your future with Cross International. Your behavior this week has been unprofessional and inappropriate." Veronica's face went white. "You're firing me over her. I'm suggesting you might be happier elsewhere. I'll give you a generous severance package and excellent recommendations. But yes, I think it's time we parted ways professionally." Daniel's voice was firm. "Final." "You're making the biggest mistake of your career," Veronica hissed. "Am I? Because from where I'm standing, the biggest mistake I ever made was letting work consume me for so long that I almost missed out on real love. I'm not making that mistake again." Daniel walked away, leaving Veronica fuming in the hallway. He found Rachel in her room packing her suitcase and pulled her into his arms. "Everything okay?" she asked, sensing his tension. "Everything's perfect," Daniel said. "For the first time in my life, everything is exactly as it should be." On the flight home, Rachel's father pulled her aside while Daniel was sleeping. "He's a good man, Mika," he said in Spanish, "and he loves you. I can see it in the way he looks at you. I love him too, Papa. Is that crazy? We've only known each other a few weeks." "Your mother and I knew after 3 days," her father said with a smile. "When you know, you know. Don't let fear steal your happiness." Rachel kissed her father's cheek, grateful for his wisdom and support. As she settled back into her seat next to Daniel, he stirred and reached for her hand. Even in sleep, Rachel laced her fingers through his, watching the clouds drift by outside the window, and let herself believe that maybe this crazy, impossible love story might actually work. Back in New York, reality hit fast and hard. Rachel's father's condition took a turn for the worse. 3 days after they returned, what had seemed like a stable situation in Dubai became an emergency when he collapsed in their small apartment. Rachel rushed him to the hospital, her hands shaking as she called Daniel from the emergency room at 2 o'clock in the morning. He arrived within 20 minutes, still in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair disheveled from sleep. But he took charge, immediately speaking to doctors, arranging for specialists, ensuring Rachel's father got the best care possible. For 3 days, Rachel barely left her father's side. Daniel brought her food she didn't eat, coffee she let go cold, changes of clothes she barely noticed. The doctors stabilized her father, but the prognosis was grim. The cancer had spread more aggressively than anyone had anticipated. 6 months, maybe a year with aggressive treatment, Dr. Chen told Rachel gently. I'm sorry. Rachel nodded numbly, unable to process the words. 6 months. Not enough time. Never enough time. Daniel found her in the hospital chapel at midnight, staring at candles without seeing them. He sat beside her silently, and after a long moment, Rachel turned to him. I can't do this, she whispered. Do what this relationship. My father is dying, Daniel. I need to focus on him. On the time we have left, I can't be your girlfriend and plan dates and attend business functions. I can't be what you need. Daniel's face went pale. Rachel, I don't need you to be anything except yourself. Let me help you through this. You don't understand, Rachel, said, tears streaming down her face. Everyone I love leaves. My mother died. Now my father is dying. I can't attach myself to you and then lose you too. I can't survive it. You're not going to lose me, Daniel said fiercely. I'm not going anywhere. Yes, you will. Eventually you'll realize this is too much. The sick father, the waitress with no prospects, the girlfriend who can't give you what you deserve. You'll leave, and I'll be alone again. And I can't, Daniel. I can't do it. Rachel was spiraling. She knew it. But she couldn't stop. All her fears, all her insecurities came pouring out in the quiet chapel. Daniel tried to pull her into his arms, but she pushed him away. Rachel, please don't do this. Don't push me away, because you're scared. I'm not pushing you away. I'm being realistic. Look at us, Daniel. Really look. We're from different worlds. This was always going to end badly. That's not true, and you know it. Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. I love you. I don't care about different worlds or prospects or any of that. I care about you. You'll change your mind, Rachel said, with heartbreaking certainty. When the reality of this sets in, when my father's illness gets worse, when you see what it really means to be with me, you'll leave. They always leave. Who left you, Rachel, besides your mother dying? Who left you? Daniel's question was gentle, but probing. Rachel closed her eyes, and the truth came tumbling out. Before her mother died, there had been someone else. A college boyfriend who'd promised forever, who'd said he loved her. But when her mother got sick and Rachel had to drop out of school to care for her, he'd left. Said he couldn't handle the pressure, the sadness, the constant hospital visits. He'd wanted the fun, carefree girl, not the one drowning in medical bills and grief. I'm not him, Daniel said when she finished. I'm not some boy who runs when things get hard. I've built a billion-dollar company from nothing. I don't give up on things that matter to me, and you matter more than anything else in my life. Now, Rachel said, I matter now, but eventually there is no eventually. Daniel interrupted, his voice rising with frustration. There's just now, and now, I love you, and tomorrow, I'll next month, and next year. Why can't you believe that? Because people don't stay. Rachel shouted, her composure finally shattering completely. People leave, Daniel. They die, or they walk away, or they realize you're not worth the effort. That's what happens. That's what always happens. The chaplain poked his head in concern on his face, but Daniel waved him away. When they were alone again, Daniel knelt in front of Rachel, taking her hands in his. I stayed when my father died, and left me a company. I was terrified I'd destroy, he said quietly. I stayed when every relationship I tried failed because I couldn't balance work and love. I stayed when Sheikh Ahmed could have walked away from that deal. When Veronica tried to sabotage you, when everything was telling me to give up. I stayed, Rachel, and I'm staying now. The question is, will you let me? Rachel looked at him through her tears. This powerful man on his knees in a hospital chapel, begging her to let him love her. And she wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it could work. But fear was a powerful thing, and it had its claws in deep. I need time, she whispered. I need to focus on my father. Please, Daniel, just give me some space. Pain flashed across Daniel's face, but he nodded. Okay, I'll give you space. But Rachel, I'm not giving up on us. When you're ready, I'll be here. He stood, pressed a kiss to her forehead, and left. Rachel watched him go, part of her screaming to call him back. But she didn't. She let him walk away, and with every step he took, her heart broke a little more. The next 2 weeks were the worst of Rachel's life. Her father was released from the hospital with hospice care arranged. He came home to their tiny apartment, and Rachel took a leave of absence from the restaurant to care for him. Daniel respected her request for space, but he didn't disappear entirely. Flowers arrived at her apartment every other day. Groceries were delivered always with the exact items she needed. Her father's medical bills, which should have been crushing, were mysteriously paid, and twice a week a package arrived with food from expensive restaurants, still warm, portioned perfectly for two. Rachel knew it was Daniel taking care of her, even from a distance. It made her love him more and resent him at the same time. Why couldn't he just let her go? Why did he have to be so persistent, so kind, so impossible to forget? Her father noticed, of course. 3 weeks into their separation, he called Rachel to his bedside. He was thinner now, weaker, but his eyes were still sharp. "Mia, you're being an idiot," he said in Spanish. Rachel blinked in surprise. Her father never spoke to her that way. "Papa, that man loves you. You love him. Why are you doing this?" "I'm protecting myself," Rachel said. "I'm being smart." "You're being a coward," her father said bluntly. "And I didn't raise a coward." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared, Papa. What if he leaves like Michael did? What if I lose him, like I lost Mama? I can't take another loss. I can't." Her father reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. "Mija, listen to me. I'm dying. We both know it. And the biggest regret I have is all the time I wasted being scared after your mother died. I was so afraid of being hurt again that I never let anyone else in. I've been alone for 3 years, and I hate it." "But you had me," Rachel protested, "and I'm grateful for you every day. But romantic love, the kind you have with Daniel, is different. It's precious and rare and terrifying. Your mother and I had it. And yes, losing her almost destroyed me. But Rachel, I would rather have had 20 years with her and lost her than never have loved her at all." Rachel sobbed, laying her head on her father's chest. "What if I'm not strong enough?" "You are," her father said, stroking her hair. "You're the strongest person I know. You dropped out of school for me. You work yourself to exhaustion to pay my medical bills. You learned to navigate a world of billionaires and sheikhs without losing yourself. You can do this, Mika. You can let yourself love and be loved. But what about you? You need me. I do need you. But I also need to know that when I'm gone, you won't be alone. That man, Daniel, he'll take care of you. He'll love you the way you deserve. Let him, Rachel. Please give me that peace before I go." Rachel cried harder, but some knot in her chest was loosening. Her father was right. She'd been so focused on protecting herself from potential pain that she was causing real pain right now. She was hurting Daniel, hurting herself, wasting the precious time they could have together. "What do I do?" she whispered. I pushed him away. "What if he doesn't want me anymore?" Her father laughed, then coughed. "That man sent you flowers twice a week for a month. He paid all my medical bills without asking for thanks. He respects your space, but make sure you're cared for. Trust me, he still wants you, but you need to fight for him the way he's been fighting for you." Rachel nodded, wiping her tears. Okay, I'll talk to him." "Good. Now help me sit up. I want to see you make the call." With shaking hands, Rachel dialed Daniel's number. It rang 3 times before he answered. "Rachel!" His voice was cautious, hopeful, and Rachel's heart clenched at the sound. "Hi," she said, her voice breaking. "Can we talk in person?" "I'll be there in 15 minutes, Daniel said immediately. He made it in 12. Rachel opened the door to find him slightly breathless, his eyes searching her face anxiously. "Is your father okay?" "He's fine, resting, Daniel." She took a breath. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for pushing you away. You don't have to apologize, Daniel started. But Rachel shook her head. Yes, I do. I was scared and hurting, and I took it out on you. You've been nothing but wonderful, and I repaid that by shutting you out. That was wrong. Daniel stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. I understand why you did it. You were protecting yourself. I don't want to protect myself anymore, Rachel said, leaning into his touch. I want to be brave enough to love you, even though it terrifies me. Even though I know I could lose you. You're not going to lose me, Daniel said firmly. Rachel, these past 3 weeks have been hell. I missed you every second. I love you so much, it physically hurts. Please don't shut me out again. Let me be here for you, for your father. Let me help. I love you too, Rachel whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it properly. I love you, Daniel Cross, and I want to be with you for however long we have. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly. Rachel could barely breathe, but she didn't care. This was where she belonged, where she'd always belonged. They stood there for a long time just holding each other, making silent promises. When they finally pulled apart, Rachel led him to her father's room. Her father smiled at them, his approval clear. About time, he said in English, making Daniel laugh. From that moment, things changed. Daniel didn't just visit. He became part of Rachel's daily life. He helped with her father's care, learning to administer medications and assist with mobility. He read to her father in the evenings, translated business news into Spanish, played chess badly, and with good humor. Rachel watched the two most important men in her life bond, and it filled her heart to bursting. But even as happiness bloomed, reality loomed. Her father was getting worse. The 6-month prognosis was looking optimistic. Doctor Chen gently suggested it might be weeks, not months. Rachel tried to stay strong, but some nights after her father fell asleep, she would break down. And Daniel was always there holding her through the storms, never once complaining or pulling away. One evening, 6 weeks after the reunion, Rachel's father asked to speak to Daniel alone. Rachel was nervous, but her father insisted, so she retreated to the kitchen while the two men talked in the bedroom. 20 minutes later, Daniel emerged, his eyes red, but his expression peaceful. What did he say? Rachel asked anxiously. He gave me his blessing, Daniel said softly. His blessing for what? But before Daniel could answer, her father called for her. She rushed to his side, and he smiled weakly, patting the bed beside him. Sit, Mia. Rachel sat, taking his frail hand. Her father looked at Daniel, who had followed her into the room. I told Daniel that I'm ready, her father said in Spanish. Ready for what, Papa? Rachel's voice trembled. Ready to let go. Ready to be with your mother again. He switched to English, looking at Daniel. But I needed to know you'd be taken care of. Daniel has promised me he'll love you, protect you, help you achieve your dreams. That's all a father can ask. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. Papa, don't talk like that. You're not going anywhere. We both know that's not true, Mija. And that's okay. I've lived a good life. I've raised an incredible daughter. I've seen you fall in love with a good man. I'm at peace. He squeezed her hand weakly. Promise me you'll be happy. Promise me you'll let yourself love fully without fear. I promise, Papa. Rachel sobbed. I promise. Her father died peacefully 3 days later in his sleep, with Rachel holding one hand and Daniel holding the other. The grief was overwhelming, a tidal wave that threatened to drown Rachel completely. But Daniel was her anchor, steady and unbreakable, holding her together when she fell apart. The funeral was small but beautiful. Sheikh Ahmed sent flowers and a heartfelt letter. Illa sent a recording of Arabic prayers. Rachel's co-workers from the restaurant came, and so did several of Daniel's employees who'd heard about Rachel's father and wanted to pay their respects. After the burial, Rachel stood by the grave, unable to leave. Daniel stood beside her, silent and supportive. He was proud of you, Daniel said finally. He told me that every time we talked, how strong you were, how kind, how you'd sacrificed everything for him without complaint. I didn't sacrifice everything, Rachel whispered. I gained something too. Time with him. Memories. And because of him, I met you. Daniel turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Your father made me promise something before he died. He made me promise to take care of you, to love you, to help you build the life you've always dreamed of. Daniel, you don't have to. I want to, he interrupted. Rachel, these past months with you have been the best of my life. You've shown me what really matters. Not deals or money or power, but love, connection, being present for the people who matter. He reached into his pocket, and Rachel's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. Daniel, I know the timing isn't perfect. Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. I know you're grieving, and I'm not asking for an answer right now, but I need you to know that I'm committed to you, to us, for the long haul. When you're ready, whenever that is. I want to marry you, Rachel Martinez. I want to spend the rest of my life loving you. He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. Your father helped me choose it. He said, your mother had sapphire eyes, and he wanted you to carry a piece of her with you always. Rachel's tears fell harder, but they weren't just tears of grief anymore. They were tears of love, of gratitude, of hope. My father helped you pick this 2 weeks ago. He was very specific about what he wanted. Daniel smiled through his own tears. He said, I had to make sure the proposal was worthy of you. I hope this is. Rachel threw her arms around him, holding him tight. It's perfect. You're perfect. And yes, Daniel, yes, I'll marry you. Not someday. Not when I'm ready. Yes, right now. Life is too short to wait. Daniel pulled back his eyes wide. Are you sure, Rachel? You don't have to? I'm sure, Rachel said firmly. My father taught me that love is precious and rare, that when you find it, you hold on to it with both hands. I love you, Daniel Cross. I want to build a life with you starting now. Daniel slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her soft and sweet and full of promise. There in the cemetery with the sun setting and the world continuing to turn, and Rachel felt for the first time since her father's death a flicker of joy. Her father would have loved this moment. 2 months later, Rachel stood in front of a small brownstone in Brooklyn, keys in hand, hardly able to believe it was real. Daniel had bought it for her for them, but more specifically, for her dream. The first floor would be her restaurant, a small, intimate space serving Lebanese fusion cuisine. The second floor would be their home. Are you ready? Daniel asked, standing beside her. Rachel nodded, unlocking the door and stepping inside. The space was raw, unfinished, full of potential, just like her new life. Over the next 6 months, Rachel threw herself into building her dream. She enrolled in culinary school part-time, finished her business degree online, and worked with contractors to transform the brownstone. Daniel supported her in every way. Financially, yes, but more importantly, emotionally, he tasted every experimental dish, gave honest feedback, helped her write the business plan, and never once made her feel like his money meant he had control. Sheikh Ahmed, true to his word about future collaborations, invested in Rachel's restaurant as a silent partner. He said it was good business, but Rachel knew it was more than that. It was respect, friendship, and a bridge between cultures. On opening night, Rachel stood in her kitchen, dressed in chef whites, her heart pounding. The dining room was full. Daniel sat at a corner table with friends from Cross International. Sheikh Ahmed had flown in from Dubai with Ila. Rachel's old co-workers from La Belve had come, and there in a place of honor was a photo of her mother and father smiling together in happier times. "Chef, we're ready to start service," her sous chef said. Rachel took a deep breath, said a silent prayer to her parents, and nodded. "Let's do this." The night was a triumph. Every dish that left her kitchen was perfect. A blend of her mother's recipes and her own innovation. Reviews were glowing. Customers left happy. And when the last guest departed and Rachel finally sat down exhausted and exhilarated, Daniel was waiting. "You did it," he said, pulling her into his arms. You really did it. We did it, Rachel corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, Daniel said. Seriously, you're the strongest person I know, Rachel. You would have found a way. I'm just grateful I got to be part of the journey. 3 weeks later, they were married in a small ceremony at the restaurant. Rachel wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit. Daniel wore a kandura honoring the culture and people who'd brought them together. Sheikh Ahmed officiated reading vows in both Arabic and English. As they exchanged rings, Rachel felt her parents' presence, a warm glow of approval. And when Daniel kissed her as husband and wife, the small crowd erupted in cheers. That night, after the guests had left, and they'd cleaned up Daniel, and Rachel stood on the brownstone's roof looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. Do you think your father would be happy? Daniel asked. I think he'd be thrilled, Rachel said, leaning into her husband's warmth. He wanted me to live fully to love without fear, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Daniel turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face. I love you, Rachel Cross. Every day, I thank whatever cosmic force brought you into that restaurant that night. I love you too, Rachel whispered. Thank you for being patient with me, for fighting for us even when I was too scared to. Always, Daniel promised, for the rest of our lives. He kissed her, then deep and passionate, and Rachel kissed him back with equal fervor. Below them, the city hummed with life and possibility. Behind them, their restaurant stood ready for tomorrow's service, and ahead of them stretched a future full of love, dreams, and endless possibilities. Daniel pulled her closer, and Rachel wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. This was her happy ending, the one her father had wanted for her. But more than that, it was her happy beginning, the start of a life she'd built with her own hands, and the love of an extraordinary man. And as they stood there under the stars, Rachel knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges came, they would face them together. She was no longer afraid of loss or heartbreak. She'd learned that love, real love, was worth every risk. The city lights blurred through her happy tears as Daniel kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. And in that perfect moment, Rachel had everything she'd ever needed. They turned toward the stairs, hand in hand, ready to begin their life together.